How's it going, viewers? Welcome back to another video. It's a new year, it's a new F1 season, and it is the first episode of the year of a race review on this channel. I'm super excited to get into it. We've got a lot to talk about, but before we do, I've got a few things to announce. It's just in regards to this, it's nothing serious, but I am changing the format of this series. So the changes are, instead of them being called race reviews, I'm going to be calling it weekend review. A little bit different, but I'll get into the reason why in a second. Basically because we're going to talk about the race as usual, but we're also going to talk about qualifying, which happens on the Saturday obviously, and then we're going to talk about the predictions videos which I make on TikTok and which I will be posting on YouTube from now on, which I would have made on Tuesday. So we're going to cover all those things. I think it should make it a bit more interesting and a bit more productive video. But hopefully we'll enjoy. Let's get straight into the Australian Grand Prix weekend. Okay, so we are going to get into this review, starting with qualifying, and I think starting with what you've just seen on the screen behind me. Max Verstappen crashing out on his first lap in Q1, which I don't think we've ever seen that in the history of Formula 1. So that is pretty insane, to say the least. From what we understand, it was apparent that it was some kind of software / engine malfunction. The team mentioned that it was essentially a component within the engine which regulates the engine braking, did too much engine braking, which then caused the rear wheels to lock up, sending him into that unrecoverable spin. I think you can attribute like 80% of the blame to what Red Bull have said, but I think just a slither of the blame has to go to Max, because an engine braking thing like that doesn't happen on its own, if you get what I mean. So I think you have to account 20% of the blame for him, for probably getting on the brakes too hard. If anything, that's probably what's caused it. But it is very hard. It is very hard to tell, because he didn't touch the grass or anything. He was well away from that. So a big crash, and it definitely made the race very interesting on Sunday, because Max never crashes and never goes out in Q1. So that was pretty cool. At least from my point of view, because I'm not a huge Max fan. Anyway, gonna move it on. The next point on my little notes is Russell dunking 7/10 or a second, on the next non-Mercedes car. Obviously, Kimi was pretty close. I think about 3/10 behind off the top of my head, but I don't have that written down. So it's clear to see that the two Mercedes, at least, are very close together. But at least in qualifying, it does seem that Mercedes are a cut above the rest when it comes to one-lap pace. Obviously, there was a bit of a talking point, people saying how it's not F1 at the fact that George was lifting down into turn 9. But, look, I don't even think he was lifting. I think it was, because obviously we heard him downshifting into turn 9, which a lot of people weren't happy about. But I think, it probably wasn't a case of lifting too much. It was probably more the issue of the de-acceleration after running out of battery. Granted, that isn't any better, to be honest, but I don't think it's quite as what people were so gutter-pressed about. But it does seem that Mercedes are a cut above the rest, especially Ferrari. Obviously, you had Hadjar up in third place, so definitely, seemingly breaking that second seat curse. That was a phenomenal qualifying to go 9/10 or so behind George in the Mercedes. So I think there's positives at Red Bull there. They do look good over a one-lap pace, which I think if Max hadn't had the crash, probably would have been, I reckon, ahead of Hajar in third place. So, at least in qualifying, with Hajar's performance, it does bode well for Red Bull. In the race, not as much, but we will get into that later. But I think it does definitely bode well for Red Bull in qualifying sessions to come, that Hajar was able to get his car up into the top 3. So that is good. Ferrari, they didn't look amazing, to be completely honest. I thought they were going to be much more up there in terms of one lap pace. Obviously, we saw them quick in the race. We will get into that. But over one lap, it seemed a bit lackluster. I really thought Leclerc would have at least mixed it in with Antonelli for the top or for that second place spot. But they didn't. They were 4th and 5th. Oh, sorry, not even that. They were 5th and 7th at the flag. So, not ideal for Ferrari, but obviously we saw their start seems to neutralise that a bit. But yeah, I think the word for me is surprising. They were surprisingly off the pace. I thought they would have been at least a little closer to Mercedes at the end of Q3. But nonetheless, they still had a good start. But yeah, I think Ferrari do have some pace to find over one lap. But this leads me on nicely to a question from Jed, who asks, could Max have won the race if he had qualified in the top 5? It's a good question. Oh, that's bad, Mike. It's a good question, definitely. Do I think he could have won? I don't think so. It's incredibly hard to tell. I think we would have had a better understanding if Hajar had not had the engine failure, which took him out on lap 14. That would have given us a better understanding of Red Bull's pace if he had gone to the end. Obviously, Max finished 6th behind Lando, about 3 seconds behind Lando, but I don't think he would have won the race. After looking at that, after looking at the Aussie Grand Prix, it seems to me that Mercedes and Ferrari are fairly close. Then there is what's the word I'm looking for? There is a chasm between Ferrari and McLaren, and then McLaren and Red Bull are fairly close. That is what it looks like. So I think even if Max had qualified, 3rd, 4th, even 2nd, I don't think the Red Bull would have had the speed to stay in that top 5 or to stay in that podium spot. But that is more race talk. That is pretty much everything I wanted to cover in qualifying. It was a very good qualifying session. I'm glad that Russell dunked 7/10 on the next non-Mercedes car. You can tell I'm just a little happy about that. But that is going to be it for qualifying chat. Going to move it on to the race, which I think is what everybody wants to talk about. Okie dokie. So this is now the best time to get into the bit which I think everybody has tuned into this video for. We're going to talk about the race. Now, I've got a few notes here, and we're going to start off, I think, with the best place to start, and it's not even in the race, it's on the lap to the grid. Oscar Piastri crashing all on his own on the lap to the grid. Not the formation lap, the lap to the grid, which for those who don't know, before we do the grid walk, the cars have to go around the lap and park at the grid so the teams can set up everything. But he couldn't even get there, as you're seeing on the screen. So coming out of turn 4, got up on the curb. Bit of a combination of getting up on the curb, cold tyres, and an alleged torque spike from the engine, but couldn't get around. And it's going to bring me on to a question from FSTVRB, who asks, Oscar Piastri DNF, was it the nerves or the team? Now, good question. I think it could be tossed up to a few different things. Do I think it was the team? Not really. There was talk of it being a torque spike from the engine. I don't think that was the case, in all honesty. I love Oscar, but I think it is ultimately driver error. Is it nerves? Not, I don't think so either. I think it is just, it's one of those, how do you put it? It's one of those lapses in concentration where he's probably just had a little slip of the mind, he's not thinking, and he's put the foot down, and it's gone around on him into the wall. It's a real shame for him, but with an incident like that, I don't think you can blame the car or the team in that situation purely because of the nature of the incident. Obviously, I'm sure everyone is aware of the Australian curse. It very much has struck again, but yeah, I don't think you can attribute a car issue to Piastri's accident. But we're gonna move on. Next up, I think I want to have a little talk about reliability. That was one of the question marks going into the race. Was, how many cars are going to make it? Who's gonna DNF and whatnot? You had the likes of Martin Brundle going. I think anyone who finishes is going to finish in the points because we're going to have 12 DNFs. Wasn't quite that bad, but there were definitely a few DNFs. I think the most notable of these was Isaac Hadjar in the Red Bull. He was running in 5th place at the time, and going up in a cloud of smoke on lap 14, a real shame. And it does raise a few eyebrows for Red Bull. Obviously, we had the point earlier of, could Max have won the race if he had qualified in the top 5? I still don't think that is the case. I don't think Red Bull have the pace, but the reliability does raise an extra concern for the team, which they are definitely going to have to keep an eye on. Also down at VCarb, they're going to have to keep the same eye because only going 14 laps. It's not exactly encouraging for Red Bull, and it's definitely going to be it's not really cause for massive alarm, but it is going to have to be on their radar, because if they keep having issues like that, it could be a problem when we're getting to round 11, round 12-ish, and they've already gone through 3 engines, and they're racking up penalties and grid penalties every other week, because the engines can't last. So it is going to have to be something that they have a look at, because as you can see here, going up in a cloud of smoke, it's not electronics, it's not hydraulics, it is obviously something to do with the ICE, which is fixable, but it is the game over failure to have in the car. But yeah, definitely something for them to keep an eye on in races to come, especially in China next week. Okay, so we're going to keep moving this show along. We're going to talk about the first 10 laps, because I think popular opinion, the first 10 laps were the most entertaining laps of the race, and all the people on Twitter and online, on Instagram and yada yada yada, complaining after qualifying about how the regulations are going to be shit, they really got shut up after those after those laps. They were fantastic. We had the lead change 5 times in 10 laps, which in 2022 to 2025 Formula 1 is pretty much unheard of, to be completely honest. Almost completely unheard of. So the fact that we are getting that kind of battling this early in the race and this early in the year, I think is going to shape it up to be an epic year of F1. Obviously, it was Russell and George. Sorry, it was Russell and George. It was Russell and Leclerc fighting with Hamilton hanging back, but really provided the entertainment. And I, for one, really enjoyed it, and I think it goes to show that while these regs have their teething problems, I don't think you can bag on these regulations just yet. Like, yes, they've got their issues, but those 10 laps really showed everybody that these regs do provide good do provide good racing, do need to be taken seriously, and are not as bad as what people say they are. So that definitely made me very happy. Also brings me on nicely to another question from Mr. Greg Cook, Wooly, who asks, do you think anyone can catch Merc? This is a very good question, because the race was definitely much a tale of two teams. It was definitely a tale of Mercedes staying out in front and leading the race, and Ferrari chasing. I think it is a little bit of foreshadowing for the rest of the season. I think the season is going to go like that. You've got Mercedes out front, controlling the pace, and Ferrari doing everything they can to keep up. I think, was a really good effort for Mercedes. Are they catchable? Honestly, I think they are. It brings me on to my other point about the Ferrari disaster class under the VSC. But I think if Ferrari don't make those strategy errors, which they are prone to doing, but if they don't make those strategy errors, they keep the strategy concise, they work together with Leclerc and Hamilton, I think if they can do that, I think they do have a real shot at this. Maybe at the driver's title, but I think at least a very good shot at the Constructors' Championship. Because, you saw they had the pace. They jumped ahead of the Mercedes at the very start. Both Ferraris got insane starts off the line. Leclerc was leading out of turn 1, which is very encouraging in that regard. But I think they do. I think they really do have the capability to win the Constructors' Championship. The Drivers' Championship is another story. But in terms of the Constructors, I think they do have a really good opportunity, but, and it's a big but, it really determines on them outlawing and getting rid of these strategy blunders. Because you saw it with the VSC. They had a VSC for Hadjar, and Mercedes pitted, McLaren pitted with Norris, and a few other in the midfield did too. But where are Ferrari? They're just staying out, just handing time to Mercedes, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, just pit. It doesn't have to be both cars. I get that it could be seen as a risk, but just pit one of them, for fuck's sake. All you've got to do is pit one car. Whether it's Leclerc or Hamilton, it doesn't really matter, but at least pit one of them. Because if you don't, this is what happens. You get destroyed by the teams who have pitted. And once we got into lap 20-ish, and you saw Russell going past Hamilton and Leclerc, you saw how easy it was for the British driver to just sail on through on fresh tyres. So I really, I've been watching Formula 1 for 11 years, and when they do these disaster classes, I really don't understand the thought process behind them, because obviously I'm no Formula 1 strategist, but it really is that easy. It really is that easy. So it's all up in the air. I have no idea why they didn't pit under the VSC, but that is something they're going to have to learn from. And if they do, I think they do have a shot at the Constructors, but they've got to fix those issues first. And then that is pretty much, pardon me, all I wanted to talk about for the race. I guess to sum up, people were wrong about these regulations. Yes, there is lifting and coasting. Yes, there is management. Should it be in qualifying? Not really. Should it be in the race? It doesn't matter. It's a challenge for the drivers, and the sooner people accept that, the better this sport is going to be. So people do need to get off their high horse about management. It's been in F1 since the 50s, and they need to, honestly, they need to grow up a bit. But definitely it was really entertaining, and I think it bodes well for the rest of the season. But we are going to move it on into the final segment of the video. Okay, and the final segment of this video is we're going to reflect on my predictions and fantasy team picks for this race. If you don't follow me on TikTok, please do. It's at the same channel name as YouTube. But every time we have a race, I like to post a predictions video. We predict the top 5, pole position, and a crazy prediction. But we're going to get into it. For pole position, I said Charles Leclerc, which, looking back on it, probably not the right pick. Didn't have that one come in. But oh well, we move on. I thought I would just mention, so these were recorded on Tuesday of last week, so 3 days before the start of any running, so didn't really have any idea, but that's how I like it to be. Moving on to P5, I went for Oscar Piastri. Didn't come in. I think we all know why that is. A little bit of a crash before the start of the race. P4 went for Antonelli. Incorrect. I think I was a bit too harsh on Kimi with these predictions. Number 3, I went for Lando Norris. Again, didn't come in. I overestimated a bit McLaren's pace, so that is going to be taken into account for next week. Number 2, or P2, sorry, I should say, I went for Charles Leclerc. This one nearly came in, but I was just a position out on it, unfortunately. But I was close. And then P1, I went for George Russell, which did come in. Thank God that came in. W George Russell. So let's go. We at least got one prediction, right? And then finally, my crazy prediction was that we had 5 or more DNFs on lap 1, which unfortunately did not come in. We had 2. So I was 3 off, but we at least did get DNFs on lap 1. So not the end of the world. But out of the 7 predictions, we only got 1 correct. Not my best run, but we're going to lock in for the rest of the season. And then we're going to have a quick gander at the fantasy team. I should have let you all know what I was doing, but I've only thought of doing this segment in the last few hours because I thought it would actually be quite interesting. But we're going to have a look at my team, see kind of what points we got. And we're going to have a look at Russell Supremacy. Is the team name. Managed team, here we go. And what we are going to do, what I am going to do is for the next video, which is going to be a predictions video, I am going to pick this fantasy team on video. But the people we picked, I went for George Russell as my first pick. That's a good choice. I'm very happy I went with that. My second pick was Carlos Sainz. I was thinking that Williams were going to be just a little bit better. Also, bear in mind, I've done all of these before practice too. I like to do fantasy before practice because it makes it harder. I went for Sainz as my second pick. That didn't come in. That was not a good pick from me, to say the least. He was 15th or so at the flag, which didn't work out. My third pick was Esteban Ocon, which I also put the 2 times boost on. That actually wasn't bad. He finished P11, just behind Pierre Gasly. So I'm actually going to take that. Not too bad of a pick. My fourth pick was Nico Hulkenberg. He was out on lap 1, so that was a huge flop there. Unlucky. I was banking on a bit more Audi performance, but we did see it in Bortoleto, which was good. And then my fifth driver was Pierre Gasly, as you can not really see. But yeah, my fifth pick was Pierre Gasly, who scored points. So a good pick there, but I was worried for the whole race that he was going to take out to Ocon and absolutely ruin my fantasy team. That was something I was quite worried about. And then for teams, Ferrari was my number 1 pick. That was good. That got me a lot of points considering they were third and fourth. And then my second team was Haas, because I decided to go for value for money. And I think I did do well with Behrman in 7th and Ocon in 11th, so that is not a bad pick. But that is fantasy team, and I'm gonna update it in the next video. But that is gonna do it for this race review video, everybody. Hopefully you all enjoyed. That was a lot of fun to make, and as always, I enjoy talking about my beloved Formula 1. As always, join the Discord. The link is in bio. Send me your questions, and I will comment on them like I have done today. Got the new predictions video coming out either today or tomorrow, which is going to be awesome. But that is it from me. Hopefully you will enjoy the new format. Hopefully you will enjoy the video as a whole. Stay safe, have an awesome day, make awesome choices, and I'm going to see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody.